Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, you're going to want to smash the subscribe button and also the notification button because this episode is going to blow your socks off. I just got, before I came on, I just got texted that there's a new stat that just came out that the number that we hear 22, the number is actually up to 44 to 54 a day. And we're going to be talking about how becoming an entrepreneur can save a lot of lives. So we're going to be talking about that with my friend Isaac. We've been friends for a while, been playing phone tag, and I'm so grateful to have Isaac come on. He's done some great things in uniform. I think he's doing even better things out of uniform with what he's got going on. And he's got the fob going to be going on. We're going to be talking about that. I love the hat, by the way. Amazing. So Isaac, my brother, how are you doing? I know you're not feeling that well, but I think with a little bit of coffee in you, I think you're going to kick it in a little bit.
I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Just came off of about 4.5 days flat on my back with COVID. So I heard that it was supposed to be going easier on us these days, but it did not. My body didn't get the memo. So just happy to be here. Happy to be standing up.
I love it. And you are the CEO of the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance. You are also a loving father, family man, which I love. I love that. Got a beautiful daughter, and we've been praying for ever since we know she's been sick. So our prayers are always on the way. So talk to us a little bit about where you're from, where'd you grow up, and how did you become the man that you are today?
All right. So I was born in Spokane, Washington. Bounced around a lot as a kid. Landed most of my childhood in Portland, outside of Portland, in a pretty rough neighborhood. And at a young age, we didn't have a lot. We were pretty poor, and found myself getting into a lot of trouble and messing a lot of things up, as you will do sometimes as a youth in that type of environment. And I say my life kind of started to turn around when my grandparents took me in and I moved to Idaho. I actually moved to northern Idaho, Bonners Ferry. It's basically Canada. We just don't say A. And started high school up there and actually joined the military at 17. Kind of tricked my mom into signing a permission slip or an authorization to go in at 17. And I joined the Idaho Army National Guard in 2001 and kind of changed the trajectory of my life.
Now, because I started out active duty, then I retired National Guardsman, and a lot of people don't realize I think it's harder to be a National Guardsman than it ever will be to be an active duty soldier, because a lot of times we're expected to, like when I was a tanker, so I would actually have 2 weeks to go qualify on the tank, where my counterparts have all month to train, all year to train, and we got to do it in 2 weeks. And a lot of us, like I lived in South Carolina, that once a hurricane hit, we're out there, helping everybody else. And nobody's really, we don't know how our families are doing. So talk to us a little bit about the life of a guardsman.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's really kind of disappointing in some ways in the veteran community, the way that guardsmen are kind of portrayed or looked at, right? That kind of division, kind of like between branches where, everybody, my branch is the best branch, your branch is, second best. I feel like the Guard is like the subcommittee or the sub-community of each one of those branches, where everybody's like, well, it's not really the military. And there's nothing that could be further from the truth, in my opinion. I think that it takes a special kind of person to kind of bridge the gap between civilian life and military life. When you're not living it every day and you're having to hold down a regular job and also be kind of that citizen soldier, right? So the life of a guardsman, it can be interesting just because one day so for me in my younger days, right? Like one day I'm qualifying on a range, or I'm clearing buildings out at the training site, and then the next day I'm sitting at my 9 to 5 job talking to people on the phone, as if it's just another day, right? Now, when I talk about being a guardsman getting deployed, I actually, in a lot of ways, I think that my company, and there'll probably be some people that'll argue with me on this, but I felt like it was almost a benefit or an advantage to deploy with all of these men and women that weren't full-time soldiers. We came to the table. We deployed in 2004. We were out between Riyadh and Al Hawija in Iraq in 2004, 2005, and the people that I deployed with came from so many different backgrounds and skill sets that they brought to the table, like construction workers and police and just anything you could possibly imagine. And I feel like it brought a more powerful and impactful offering to the people that we were there to try to not only protect, but to kind of bring into the next step of their history. And I think in a lot of ways, I really truly appreciated being able to deploy with those folks, because a lot of times in active duty, yeah, there are going to be people that know a lot of those things. Maybe there are people that came in a little later in their lives, but most, I would say, have that's the life they've lived, right? They know their MOS. That's their job. That's what they've done from a young age. And I was able to deploy with folks that had been working, a decade, 2 decades in skilled trades that could help the contractors. They could help the villagers that we were there to protect or that we were there to serve. So in a lot of ways, I found shame sometimes in the fact that I was never active duty, right? But it's because we've kind of been conditioned to believe that if you serve in the Guard, that it's somehow like a second best. And as a older, about to turn 40 guy now, I look back on it and I really appreciate the fact that that's the road that I traveled.
Yep. Now, also, I totally 100% agree with you, but also I know because, I was in the South Carolina National Guard, that when you lose somebody over there and they're all in the same, and they're from your unit, you're going to see their mom and dad at Stop and Shop, or you're going to see their mom and dad at Piggly Wiggly. It hurts when you're on active duty, but it hurts when you lose a couple guys and you go home and you see their family around. It hurts a lot more. And I noticed a lot of guys from my unit, because we lost a couple guys over there, and a lot of them couldn't handle it, and they ended up, doing, taking their own lives or stuff like that, because it was always a reminder. Like a lot of time, if you're in a regular Army, you might never see these guys again, except for maybe on Facebook. But but if you deployed in a National Guard armory, you're going to see these people, and it's always going to be a constant reminder. Is that true, do you think?
Absolutely. And I mean, and for some of us, even more so than others, my armory actually was in my hometown, and it was a town of 2,400 people. So very small community, right? And although I only moved to Idaho as a high school student, I'd been going there my whole life. And in 2009, I lost my best friend to suicide. And we had grown up together. We joined the military together. We had gone to basic together. We served our deployment together. And yeah, it's really hard to come home, and especially in a small community like that, because you're going to see that family. You're going to see all of the people that personally knew him, because especially in this instance where he was just kind of a larger than life character, right? So every single person that you see now associates you with that person and remembers the loss of that person every time they see you walk into the local grocery store or into the library or wherever it is you are. So yeah, 100%. I haven't experienced what it's like as a active duty soldier in a unit going back, but I can definitely tell you that seeing those families and having to kind of share in that grief on that level it definitely hits different.
No, so because people always say, "Oh, it's National Guard," 2 weeks out of the year, every 1 weekend a month, and I'm like, bro, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, sometimes it depends on how the weeks fall. You can have 3 weekend drills in a row, to where you're not off for a month, and then every time there's a wedding or something, guess it's going to be on your drill weekend, And usually
Truth.
they're saying if you're in the National Guard now and you sign up for 4 or 6 years, you're looking at 2 or 3 deployments. To where if you're a regular Army soldier, you might be looking at 1 to 2 deployments,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So now, how many years did you do total?
So I did 12 years.
All right. So now, because I got to ask, usually once you hit that 9-10 year mark, you're like, if I'm in it for 9, if I'm in it for 10, I might as well be in it for 20. What was it at that year mark what was your mindset in getting out of the military?
So I was struggling. I was struggling real hard. I was making some pretty poor decisions. And the camaraderie, the brotherhood that was once there, at least here in the Idaho Guard and in my MOS and my company in particular, it just wasn't really there anymore. It just didn't feel the same. And I decided that that military lifestyle, even though, I'm a weekend warrior, it just wasn't for me. It brought out the worst in me, especially on those weekends or those 2 weeks of training. I became somebody that I didn't want to be anymore. And that time had kind of come to an end for me, and I needed to make some better choices. And I knew that I wasn't happy. I was the most unhealthy I'd ever been. And I just needed to make a break and do something different with my life.
So now, did you have a plan? Because, a lot of people, like we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. A lot of people, like for me, when I got out, I got hurt on duty. You can't see, you can't shoot. We don't need you. So they medically discharged me. And I didn't have a plan. I did my whole life being Sergeant Kaufman. Now I had to learn to be Richard. What was your plan once you did get out? And how was your transitioning? Because Sergeant Nick Valentine said, military, when you get out, no matter who you are, the military doesn't give a shit about you. The phone stops ringing. You lose your mission. Some of us don't have jobs when we get out, and we struggle. So what was your transitioning like?
So I didn't have a plan. Actually, so I had started to turn things around for myself, started making some better decisions. And within days of separating from the Guard, and it was actually at a pretty low point. I'd served 12 years. I'd done everything that I possibly could. I was great at my job. And it was very unceremonious. Like at the end of the drill, March 13th of 2012, or I'm sorry, 2013, I walked out of the armory like it was any other day. And I remember going home and just wondering, like, now what, right? Like I did all of that and it just doesn't feel like it mattered, or and it just kind of strange, and I got really down on it. And a couple days later, I actually went on a first date with my now wife, and I joke that I went from getting bossed around by the military to getting bossed around by my wife, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me because she was a much better leader. And it was through our relationship and her dedication to me and kind of where I wanted to be or where I should have been and kind of where I was, helped me along a path to find kind of what my next thing was, or what that next chapter of my life was going to be. So I didn't have a plan. I was pretty reckless in deciding to separate because I didn't even put any thought into it. I was just like, okay, I'm done. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm done. And like you said, once you step out, they don't really care what you're going to do afterwards. They've used you for what they're going to use you for. And I always joke that even like the tap that they do for retirees, right? I joke that it's like a tap on the butt on the way out. It's like, all right, good game. Like, good luck with the rest of your life. And those of us that get out in the Guard, we don't have that, right? So we kind of, I think that maybe we have a little bit of an advantage because we've already been working in the community. So maybe there's some additional opportunities there. But for me, I hadn't worked a lot of very meaningful jobs. So I was working at a sales job, and I didn't really know, I didn't really have like the master plan together yet.
Well, because a lot of people don't realize that when you're in the National Guard, you live around their calendar. Your whole life is built around their training calendar. And for the hardest part for me was when I first got hurt and they medically discharged me. I still had written down on my calendar, drill this weekend, or they're going to be an AT this weekend. And I'm like, and I'm thinking about them. And I know they're not thinking about me because it's over, out of sight, right, out of mind. And by the way, I got to say, I love your, like I always say, in my house, I'm the sergeant, but my wife is the general. So, but, she saved me. So I got to give it up to my wife. She saved me, and she allowed me to be vulnerable. And I think, as men, sometimes we're all hoo-ha. But I think sometimes we have to be real vulnerable with the people in our lives to let them know, what's going on. You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah. Same story with my wife. She allowed me to be less than this strong, like I can handle it on my own guy that the military kind of beats into our head that we needed to be, right?
Yeah.
She let me like sometimes cry, right? So sometimes just not be okay. And I think too often we don't allow ourselves to not be okay.
Yep. Okay. So first I want to get in on how you reinvented and reimagined your life. But first I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, when I was in the military, I loved coffee, but it always tasted like ass. It always tasted horrible. But it had a great kick to it. So I decided last year to come out with my own coffee called Vertical Momentum Coffee. Twice the energy, twice the kick, no crash, tastes amazing. And the best part of it, 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with homelessness and PTSD. I make no money off it. All the money goes to Project Die Hard to help save more lives. And guys, also, thank you, StreamYard. If you guys want to have your own show, StreamYard has a coupon for you guys to use if you want to start your own show like this, to be able to have your own show and be able to professionally stream it like we got it. But now, so talk to me, Isaac, because, when I got out and I got hurt, and I had to hang up my uniform for the last time, being Sergeant Kaufman for 23 years in the Guard and that Army, that's who I was. And now all of a sudden they took my ID card and said, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufman, and I had to figure out, all right, who's Richard? Who am I? And that was the day that I attempted suicide, Memorial Day 2012. Thank God it didn't pan out, because I was scared, because I don't know who I am. Everything, if I ever got pulled over, military driver's license. Anybody asked who I was, I'm Sergeant Kaufman. And then when you're no longer that person and you got to figure out, well, who am I? And you got to reinvent yourself. That's a mind fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you reimagine and reinvent yourself?
Well, so I'll start with kind of the spiral moment in the very beginning. So I got back from my deployment in late 2005. So a few months back from that deployment, I found myself working at a Barnes and Noble in the music department, selling CDs. And I tell this story pretty often because it was kind of that moment where I realized, like, I had just done something that mattered, potentially more than anything definitely more than anything that I'd done up to that point in my life. And I was moving the needle for someone somewhere in the world. And now I wasn't. I was slinging Johnny Cash CDs at a Barnes and Noble. Like, I love Johnny Cash, but it doesn't mean shit. So I was like, man, what am I doing? And I just started spiraling. And I made a lot of bad decisions. I got in trouble with the law. I was suicidal at times. Lost a few friends to that same struggle. And I just kept on stumbling and tripping and falling and getting back up and doing it all over again. And the reinvention, as you put it, it started when I got my first taste of entrepreneurship. And I was coming fresh off of a shoulder surgery at the VA. I may or may not have been a little bit stoned on the pain meds that they had me on. And I got a phone call on a job I had applied for on Craigslist. I didn't really remember applying for the job. I didn't even really remember what the job was, but I took it. And it was working for a credit card processing company. And I had no idea what I was doing. I went in there and I started working the job, and I was really good at what they had me doing, and gave me some confidence. And so I won't bore you with all the details, but I started progressing pretty quickly through the ranks there. And before I knew it, I was running the sales team. I was building their sales team. And at some point I had close to a dozen guys in the room, and managing a bunch of outside sales reps, and really kind of running this team as if it were my own business. And suddenly I realized that I had a reason again, right? Like, I was serving small businesses. They're the backbone of everything that we're built on, right? And it just felt good, and it was that mission that I'd been missing. It was that purpose. It was that reason to get up in the morning and just keep driving forward that I'd been missing, but I didn't realize was really gone. And so my time there came to an end when I realized that I was kind of capped, since it wasn't really my business. I wanted to do more. And in order to do more, I needed to be kind of my own captain, right? And so I made the decision to go out on my own with the support of my lovely wife. who said, yeah, let's do this, and jumped ship and started my own company. And it was the best decision that I ever made in my life, because I was able to not only serve small businesses, but I was able to take from what I was doing and give back to others in the community that were doing good things. So I started giving back to nonprofits and kind of getting more involved in that world. And that's when I realized that what I had experienced in finding kind of that new purpose through entrepreneurship was something that other veterans may be able to find kind of some solace or some comfort in. So I had the idea that I was going to put together a one-day event. It was going to be called the Veteran Entrepreneur Summit, and I was going to bring a bunch of people into the room that were a whole heck of a lot smarter than me that could teach these veterans how to find out whether or not entrepreneurship really is for them, right? And if it is, how to start in a sustainable way. The problem was I didn't know how to put on an event. So I just started talking to a lot of my connections in the community. And fortunately, I live in a state that is very, very supportive of their veterans. And before I knew it, I was sitting in the tallest building in downtown Boise talking to a woman that ran a business resource center for a bank here. And I pitched my idea to her, and she said, hey, like, I'm in. How can I help? And so that was the birth of the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance. We were able to put on an event that year. We served about 100 veterans in our first ever event. It was an all-day, pretty intensive training course, if you will. 100% built on the idea that there are veterans out there every single day that are dying because they didn't find traction soon enough. They didn't find a new purpose. They didn't find a new reason to just go one more day.
Yeah.
And are all the people that come to the VEA going to become business owners? No, but they're going to be able to eliminate that as one of the options, and hopefully through the community that we build here, find what that next thing is.
Yeah, and I believe that, and that's why I started this show, to let people know that there's still hope out there. There's still people there that because like you said, sometimes you have to eliminate. Well, maybe you are a business owner, you just don't know it, or maybe you have a skill that you don't think is scalable, but when somebody looks at you and you're like, like say if you design websites and people keep asking you to design websites, but you don't think it's a business, you're just having fun with it, but you don't, people around you be like, man, bro, you got talent, and it's just for people like me and you to say, all right, why don't we package that and make a business out of it? So now you're not only providing that service, but you're also having a mission at the same time. Because I
Absolutely.
find, people or veterans or first responders are 80 to 90% less likely to take their own lives if they have a reason to get up in the morning. You right?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, so now, like, I've had, I can't even count how many entrepreneurs, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs come on the show. And I always ask this question, what did you take from your military service that you use in your civilian life that helps you kick ass in your civilian job?
Kind of the never say die attitude, I guess. I'd like to say organization, but even though I spent that many years in the military, organization's not my strong suit. So really, it's just that never say die, never give up. and lean on the people around you when you need them. So the idea of, so I think a lot of us think that once we leave the military, that team, right, that support system is gone, and it's not. It's just changes. I look at all of the people that have kind of put their arms around this entire idea and helped lift it up and make it a reality. And they're my new battle buddies. They're my squad, right? They are the people that when I don't know something or I can't accomplish something alone, I can turn to them and I can say, hey, like, I need you, and they're going to be there for me. So so to reiterate, I guess, the never say die attitude, but also the willingness to turn to my left and right and ask for help when I need it.
And that's something I want to go to, asking for help when we need it, because if we're sitting in a room and I say, all right, guys, we're going to go to war. The enemy is over there, but we're just going to willy-nilly it, and we'll figure it out when we get there. People are going to be like, are you crazy? We got to have a 9-line. We got to have an SOP. But it seems like a lot of guys and girls, when they get out of the military, they want to start a T-shirt company, hat company, liquor, coffee. I did 3 out of 4, so I can't really talk too much. But a lot of us don't have a plan. A lot of us, we don't have a business plan. And like my friend Stephen Kuhn says, if you don't have a business plan, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. Yeah. So please talk to us a little bit about, not just going at business willy-nilly, to try to make sure you have a plan before you start that business.
Yeah, so that's one thing that we focus on at the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance, is making sure that prior to going all in, that you have kind of that solid framework in place first. Because too often, and not just veterans, but just people in general, right? They get really excited about an idea, and it's going to be the greatest idea ever. It's going to be life-changing for them. Customers are going to love it. Like, all of this just really exciting stuff starts happening. But if there's no structure to it, if there's no like guts, right? If there's no plan behind it, the chances of you lasting are significantly impacted. And that's where, you end up 3 to 5 years down the road with everything that you have invested in it. And then you realize that it's not going to work. It's not sustainable. And by that point, you're broke, right? You've extended yourself. You've poured everything physically and emotionally and financially into it. And then you have to realize that I got to stop. And especially in the veteran community, where we already struggle with mental health, that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? That could be that one last thing that pushes one of us over the edge. And for me, one of the most important missions for the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance is making sure that day it doesn't come, but if it does, you're prepared for it, right? Because I don't ever want anything that I do to intensify the issues that these men and women might already be facing.
And and I think that's perfect. And also, like, I know that I have my own coffee brand, but I'm not going to be able to compete with Black Rifle Coffee on price point.
Right. Okay.
Also, I have my
not yet.
I have my own swag, but I'm not going to be able to, compete with Under Armour on price point. So, right. A lot of us, we think, all right, wow, I had, whatever flea market I go to, I sold 100 t-shirts, but then we're not really looking at our analytics. We're not really looking at our margins, and we're not really looking at, shit, I got to pay tax on that. So a lot of us, we try to compete on price point, and you really can't. So you kind of have to differentiate yourself, because there's a million t-shirt guys out there. There's a million coffee guys out there. So talk to us about differentiating yourself and your business. And maybe, for me, people get behind me because I'm trying to save lives. I'm trying to do something different than just put some coffee in your mouth. You know what I mean?
Right.
Talk about, differentiating yourself, and also maybe, starting something that people can get behind and create a mission behind.
Yeah. So, I mean, I try to encourage people not to start coffee or t-shirt companies, right? Because there are so many. But in your case, right, where you have that mission behind it, right? You've got that heart, you've got that purpose. It makes sense. So when I'm talking to these folks about kind of what's the business you want to start, right? I want to start, an auto repair company. Okay, great. What's going to set you apart from the other 20 auto repair companies that I can throw a rock at right now? And that's where it's important. That's where, if you don't have some sort of mission or some sort of reason why you exist, some story to tell, you're just another drop in the bucket. You're just another business that somebody's going to drive by every single day. And yeah, they might drop in. And yeah, you might do okay. But if you can find some angle, right? And calling it an angle sounds a little like diminutive, but it's true. And it doesn't have to be just something that's face value. If you have like a deep desire to do something to serve the community, and you can find something that you can attach it to that means something to you, if it means something to you, it probably means something to a lot of other people. And I think that's the deciding factor in where I want to do business usually, right? I mean, I could go anywhere to get my car fixed or to do my grocery shopping or whatever it is, but I'm going to go to a place where I feel like I have some sort of connection, if that connection exists.
And that's something I want to talk about, because a lot of guys and girls, they start a company and it's just not scalable. For me, like before I had this show, I had a podcast. It was called Success Your Why Powers Your How. It was doing well. I mean, it was a top veteran podcast, but I had somebody come up to me and be like, bro, how are you going to put that on a t-shirt? And together, there's a reason why, Jocko has his coffee now. He's got his energy drinks. He's got, people, can't just have, it seems like you can't just have one thing. And if you do have one thing, it has to be scalable. And I think a lot of people that start a company and you look at it and you're like, that's not really scalable. If you're only doing hats, there's only so many heads to put a hat on. You know what I mean?
Right.
So talk about, trying to put a plan together, but also looking at somebody and be like, bro, you're not really scalable. So you're not going to grow because it's too small of a niche,
Yeah. I mean, so exactly. So hats, right? You look at any company that's making branded hats. Most of them need to have a million other products, right? There are some exceptions to the rule, right? There's some companies out there that they just make hats, but they found themselves in that niche early enough that they were able to plant their flag, and they can just be a hat company, and that's awesome. But you look at companies even like Grunt Style, right? They were a t-shirt company, right? And everybody wears their t-shirts. But if you go to their website now, they've got t-shirts, they've got dress shirts, they've got shoes, they've got everything. So in order to survive in this environment, you have to do something. It may not be what you want to do, right? But in order to do what you want to do, you also sometimes have to do what you have to do. So being open to change and evolution or adaptation to the market that you're trying to serve is, I mean, it's vital to your survival. Because if you stick to your guns and you say, well, this is what I want to do, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's all I'm ever going to do, the chances of your survival are probably pretty bleak. And I say it all the time with the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance. What I originally set for the VEA out to be, we're not that anymore. And that's because I set out with the goal that I want this organization to become what it needs to be for the veteran community, rather than what any single person, including myself, thinks it should be. Because the second that you turn yourself off to the idea that it can become more, or that it needs to become more, or that you might need to take a step back and kind of assess the situation and adjust, that's the second that you start barreling towards failure, in my mind.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, something else I want to talk about, if you don't mind. You know, my friend Jeff Lerner was on here last week. Now, he's got 3 7-figure businesses, and he's in the Fortune 5,000. And he talks about how, like, when I was with GNC, you know, I opened the doors at 9, I closed at 8 o'clock. The doors were closed. But now with this little thing that we have that I'm talking through right now, business is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So everything is, and a lot of stuff is going digital, and that's where the future is heading. So even when you started in business in 2013, 2014, the landscape has changed. It's so much easier to get into business because of this little thing. You don't even need warehouse space. You don't need a lot of stuff to start a business. So what are your thoughts, and what do you tell people when they say, well, I want to start a business, but I just don't have the money?
So that's a great question, because I think that too many people believe that they have to have money or a loan or like some sort of like infusion of capital in the beginning to start. You just don't. I mean, obviously there are some businesses where you may have to buy up some inventory, you might have to do some things like that, right? But I encourage people that are getting into a space like that to like start with a side hustle. Start it as something that you can just get out there little by little. Don't give up your day job immediately, right? Like that's the dumbest thing that you can do is just pouring all of your hopes and dreams into one very impulsive moment. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody, and that's a one-way ticket to probable failure. So starting smart and being patient and being able to, or being willing to scale and let it grow, rather than letting the excitement get the best of you and trying to dump everything into that from day one. I think sometimes our ego, and maybe our sense of bravado or whatever it is, like, I can make this work, like I'm going all in. That's going to work for some people, but it's not going to work for most. And so being patient, I think, is the most important thing you can possibly do.
Now, one of my friends, his name is Dennis Yu. He's been on the show a couple times. He has a blue check by his name. He was actually with Google when they first started years ago. He knows everything about behind it. He told me, he said, Rich, he said, if you want to make a difference, you can just spend $1 a day on Facebook ads, and your name will get out there so much just by spending $1 a day. Guys, if you don't have $1 a day to your name, you don't need to be starting a business.
Yeah.
But I only spend on my Facebook ads, I spend $30 a month. That's it. And I'm not doing it to get sales. I'm just getting it so people see, man, I keep seeing the Vertical Momentum podcast. What is that? You know, because people, you know, they see Coca-Cola and they keep, why do I keep seeing Coca-Cola? We all know who Coca-Cola is, because Coca-Cola wants you always in their front of their not front in your brain. They're not going for that ROI right at that moment. And
Right.
I think, like you said, you know, you need to have patience. You know what I mean? Like a lot of us, we want to go, I put an ad out today. I got to have that, make that money today. And in
Right.
business, and especially in the digital world, you know, you might not start seeing money for 2, 3, 4 months down the road. So you have to have a little bit of patience. And like you said, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk, one of my great friends, we talked, and he said, you know, your 9 to 5 will pay your bills, but your 10 to 2 will build your legacy. Right?
Right.
Right. So, tell me a little bit about, you know, your alliance and what you guys actually do. Say if I'm a guy, I just get out of the military and I want to start a business. What is the process?
So it's a great time to actually ask that question, because VEA is in a bit of a kind of like a relaunch phase almost, right? After COVID and my daughter's illness, we found ourselves trying to kind of reimagine what the VEA needed to be immediately. And there were a lot of things about COVID that were pretty terrible. One of the things that came out of it that I think will have a lasting and positive impact on the business world is the idea of being open to virtual options, right? Virtual connectivity, virtual community, virtual training. So we, rather than going back immediately to all of these face-to-face events and doing trainings and things like that, we actually decided to focus on making the VEA available to everyone, regardless of where they were geographically, where they were in their mental health journey. So we actually launched, we're about to launch an iOS and an Android app that brings everything that we have done, are doing, and will do in the future to everyone, every veteran that needs it. But maybe they can't get there because they're too far away from where our geographic reach is right now. Or maybe they can't get there because they're just not ready to be in a room with us. Now, to get back to your question, what we do as the VEA is kind of they're definitely multiple paths, right? Obviously, the first path is taking that veteran as they are either still in and considering leaving the military, or they're still in and they know what their end date is, or they've recently separated, and capturing them early and making sure that we explain exactly what entrepreneurship means, right? What it means to be a business owner, what it means to start something from nothing. That way they understand kind of what they're getting themselves into. That way we're not, because the idea of being your own boss is sexy, right? Like, it's attractive. You think like, oh man, I don't have to listen to the man anymore. That'd be great. I can be the man. And I think that sounds enticing to just about anybody. Not having to punch that clock for someone else. But once you start digging into it, and what
I was say, the bad thing about being the man is, you know, once you have a bad week, and you're not getting paid, it's not cool to be the man anymore.
Yep. Yeah. And that's exactly why we want people to understand what all of that means. Because maybe once we start digging into that, maybe that's not the answer for you. Maybe the 9 to 5 is where you need to be, or maybe starting a business from scratch, starting something brand new from nothing, from the ground up, maybe that's not for you, but maybe a franchise is for you, right? Like where somebody's already built out all of that stuff. It exists. You just got to take that ball and you got to play. So really a solid foundation of what exactly starting a business means. And then what route you want to go as far as business goes. Do you want to create this new thing that's never existed, or do you want to take something that exists and grow it into something of your own? And then once you're there, just teaching you all the things you need to start your business. Like Idaho, for instance, right? Every state has their own like little niches or their own little intricacies. So in Idaho, if you want to start an LLC, pretty simple process. It's online, $100 and you're an LLC. And then once you're an LLC, you got to go and you got to get your EIN number, right? So how do you go and do that? And why is it important? And then in the state of Idaho, you don't actually have to have an operating agreement in order to exist as a business in Idaho, but depending on the type of business you are, you should probably have an operating agreement. So just some of those intricacies that you don't really think about, like, are you going to have employees? Okay, well, here's the contact to the labor department, right? Are you going to sell things? Here's how to go get your sales tax permit. Just all of these things that you can find them, right? If you do enough searching, you could figure all of this out, but bringing it all together in one place where you don't have to go out searching and you don't have to depend on kind of your Google skills to make sure that you checked all those boxes.
You know, and I love that. But I also think, you know, now there's so many entrepreneurs and business owners that's willing to let you come in and intern with them to see, you know, is this what I'm built for? You know, like a lot, I know Gary has a lot of people that are willing to come in and intern with him to see if it's what they really want. Because, you know, a lot of times you think, wow, you know, I would love to be, you know, that mechanic, until, you know, it's friggin' 40 below in Indiana somewhere and you're cramping and you're underneath the car somewhere. You're like, this is not what I signed up for. But if you would have interned and maybe not even gotten paid, but interned a little bit to find out the inner workings, then I think you'd have a much better shot at success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big things that we focus on, we lead with the business stuff, right? Because that's the thing that draws people in. It's interesting, it's attractive. They're like, you know, I'm going to create this secure future for me and my family. But we're big on community and bringing them in and talking to other business owners, bringing in not just veteran-owned businesses, but civilian-owned businesses as well that have been there, that have done it, that they can bounce ideas off of, that they can get mentorship from, because, like you said, once you get in there, it's on you, right? If you don't get a paycheck, you're the boss. You're the person that you're mad at, right? You don't have somebody else to blame for it. So being able to kind of go down the path and talk to other people that are living that life right now, I think is incredibly important.
And something, you know, like Gary says all the time, you know, when you first start a business, you're going to have to eat shit for a while. You know, you're going to have to, you know, have to put in, you know, like, you know, Goggins talks about, you know, and Ed Milet talk about all the time. You got to put in the reps. You got to put in the work. And, you know, an entrepreneur is somebody that's willing to work 80 hours a week so he doesn't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. You know,
right.
You know, but you have to be willing to, especially, in the first 5 years, 80% of businesses fail. One is because they're undercapitalized. And then second is because they're not hustling and grinding enough, having a regular job and then working on that job, on their dreams at nighttime. So now talk to us about, I mentioned it. Tell us about the fob.
Yeah. So the fob, it's currently in the iOS and Android stores. We haven't done like our full, release or announcement on it yet because we are still working on getting some of our coursework into the back end. But
the fob was fob.
It's called the fob. Yep. And the kind of the reason that it all existed kind of comes back to what I was talking about with the virtual access. Is prior to COVID, no matter how many people I had in a room at one of these events, I always knew that there were people that weren't there. And the more I thought about it, the people that weren't there quite possibly were the people that needed to be there, more than the folks that were, right? So being able to relaunch VEA from a position of universal access, and then getting back to the face-to-face stuff, was very important to me. So the fob is essentially, at its core, it's a social media platform. It operates pretty similar to Facebook. You create a profile. There's an activity feed. You can create business pages. You can direct message other members. You can create groups. And the thing that's different, though, is that we have a learning management system built into the back end. So all of our partner organizations are currently giving us access to all of their business training. Right now we're working on a lot of financial literacy stuff. And I'll circle back to that at some point during this meeting, because you mentioned access to capital, or being capitalized. Yep. So the learning management system exists that way. We can get these men and women to start dipping their toe in the water, right? And starting to learn some of these skills kind of on their own, right? Guided by us in some way, by the structure of the course, but giving them the confidence to get in there and start learning these things, rather than being afraid to attend a first, like an early on event, not really knowing anything, and being worried that you're going to be the only person in the room that doesn't know anything, which couldn't be further from the truth, but we all do it at some point in our lives. We avoid something because we think that we might be the dumbest guy in the room, and it's probably not true, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think we are our own worst enemies when it comes to bettering ourselves. But
I also think, because I'm a ninth grade dropout, and I only finished 8th grade. So but I've read over 6,000 books, and now I have people coming on my show like Mr. Ed Milet, Gary Vaynerchuk, people like that. And I realize, it's okay to be the dumbest guy in a room. I want to be there because they say, if you ever want to build $1 million home, get the worst property in the best neighborhood. So I would rather be the worst guy in the best room, because I'll get there eventually. But I think a lot of us are afraid to say, you know what, I need to become part of a mastermind, or I need to go to an event. They won't think about, whatever this new iPhone 14 is, they won't think about anything about dropping $1,400 for a phone. But you ask them, hey, spend $500 to go to an event, to sit there and maybe get some information from a billionaire. Oh, I can't spend that $500. And you're like, so you're willing to buy a phone, a smartphone, but you're not willing to go somewhere to learn how to be smart. You're right. It doesn't make
Good
sense
point.
at times,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So now talk about, a little bit as the time we're running down about capitalization. Because I think, even like Russell Brunson said in his book, The Trilogy, that the person that can outspend the other person in marketing, they're the ones that are going to survive. So
Yeah.
talk about, capitalization and making sure that, you're doing the right thing with the money, just not spending it, the money you're getting, spending it on ads. They're not even reaching your perfect avatar.
Yeah. So my focus on capitalization, especially in the veteran community, is very heavily based on financial literacy, because a lot of us come from kind of the lower end of the socioeconomic pool, right? Me too. And I was recently appointed to a nationwide SBA committee called the Advisory Committee on Veteran Business Affairs. So it's a 3-year term. We go out to DC and we talk about veteran business issues. And I specifically asked to be put on the Access to Capital subcommittee. And that was because I read the description of why the subcommittee exists. And initially I was angry because I read that the subcommittee exists because there has been a bias identified against veteran-owned businesses when it comes to accessing capital for their businesses. And like I said, initially I was like, kind of my knee-jerk reaction was like, well, that's bullshit. Well, and then I started thinking back to when I was the veteran, that the SBA should have never, any bank should have ever considered giving me any money. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I think I know why that bias exists. And it's because a lot of us, we come from those kind of those more humble beginnings where maybe basic finances were not our parents' strong suit. So we weren't being taught skills when it came to money by our parents. We weren't getting taught in school. And then the military scoops us up at 17 or 18 years old, and then they give us more money than we've ever seen. And they don't teach us any skills either. So a lot of times they dump us out however many years later, and we're not any better at managing money than when we went in. We're a lot of times worse because we learned to spend it on rims and loud stereos and booze. And so we come out with wrecked credit a lot of times, or if we somehow came out with okay credit, we've come out with just crap skills. And so I've actually been working very hard on coming up with a program, and not just some, hey, I attended a 2-hour course and now I know how to manage my money, like an actual, like very well thought out, vetted program that runs veterans through financial literacy training that is coupled with telling their story effectively, creating a business plan that is effective, not just, hey, I need to create a business plan, so I'm going to slap one together, one that's actually meaningful and impactful. That way we can overcome the bias that exists in the lending community when it comes to veteran-owned businesses, so that when a veteran comes through the course that will hopefully one day soon exist, they can slide a package across the desk to these lenders that is so bulletproof that it overrides any potential bias that may or may not exist.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, because I'm thinking back, and we were talking about the phone and all that. There are so many free resources out there. Like I was talking to one of the Shark Tanks, the guys from Shark Tank. He told me not to mention his name, so I'm not going to mention his name. But he said, you know what? When I tell somebody that wants to sell their business or wants to get an investor in their business, I give them every episode of Shark Tank to watch. He says, because a lot of it you can learn from watching those guys and watching what they invest in and why they're investing in something. And a lot of them that they say all the time, I'm not going to invest in your business if you're not 100% all in on your business. If you're not all in it, I'm not all in it. And I think, there's so many, like there's a show out there called $1 Billion Idea that's out there. Joe DeSena has another one, another business boot camp. All this free stuff people could be picking up instead of watching football on Sunday. You could be, watching Shark Tank on a marathon, and you can start learning this stuff and start thinking, maybe, if I push, if I change my packaging a little bit, or if I could change the way I say this or show some emotion, maybe people are going to want to be interested in my stuff. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Doing the maintenance. So it kind of comes back to where I talked about the VEA and saying that I want it to become what it needs to be. Your product or your business, it needs to be the same thing. Like if you're not doing maintenance and you're not going out and finding these free resources, or if you're not fine tuning your story or your why or your actual product or your service, if you're not always tinkering and trying to find out how you can provide a better offering, then why are you doing it? Right.
And like you said, even anybody in the world, I mean, pretty much in the United States, can afford to get Audible for $15 a month. And you get one free, you get one new book a week or a month. And then you've got hundreds of millions of books you can listen to for $15 a month. So if it's up to you if you want to succeed or if you want to fail. There's, like, for me, I'm just finished Goggins, and I got Jocko's book coming up tomorrow. So when I'm doing my cardio in the morning, I'm constantly learning. I want the knowledge. I want, so, but I guess you have to be hungry for that knowledge and you got to put that knowledge to work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, and right, most of it's on you, but some of it's on, well, I guess even this is technically on you, but then once you set it in motion, it's on your community. Like, get the word out to people that care about you and that want you to succeed, and tell them your story, because those people will then go and they will tell your story too. They will sing your praises. Word of mouth advertising is the most valuable and most amazing advertising on the planet. Like, so go to your friends, go to the people that you have served and done a good job for, and ask them to go and say something kind about your business. Ask them to share it with their people, right? Because that's what's going to get your name out there more effectively than any marketing you can buy. Because when I could buy ads all day long that say how wonderful I am, but nobody's going to believe it if they look me up and they can't find anybody singing my praises. So do something good for someone and then ask them to tell people about it, because everybody's happy to do a bad review because they get emotional and they get angry. But how many people actually go out of their ways to do positive reviews or to share positive things on a regular basis? I don't know what the stats are on that, but I got to imagine it is very slanted in the direction of negative reviews.
Yep. But also, like you said, like I had the guy, he owns J-Dog Junk Removal. Yep. And he, and I had him when he first came on, and me and him have a lot in common because his daughter and my son go Coastal Carolina. And, but he said, if your neighbors don't know what you do, then you have a big issue, because if they don't know what you do, then how is anybody else gonna know what you do? But now also I had another gentleman on. He works with companies that do Amazon, and he's been in charge of $4 billion worth of Amazon transactions. And he says a lot of people, don't realize how important getting reviews, written reviews, not just a star or whatever, but how important a written review is on the algorithms of, say, Google or any of these other companies. And a lot of companies, they just don't ask for the reviews. Like, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to tell you up front, I'm going to ask you for a review, an honest review. I would never ask somebody, hey, bro, give me a 5-star review. If it's a 3-star interview, I don't deserve a 5-star review. But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I think that's why I have over 600 5-star written reviews on our iTunes, because I ask people, if I provided value, please leave a review. And I don't care, whatever the honest review is. But I think a lot of companies, they forget how important. Like, I don't even go out to dinner without looking at reviews now. And I don't ever look at the top reviews or the bottom reviews. I look in the middle. So I'll talk about that. The last couple of minutes of how important, like you said, I can say I'm the greatest thing in the world, but if Isaac Belden said that I'm great, all hats are off, right? And I think a lot of people, they forget about getting reviews and also social proof. They don't realize how important. Like, if Kardashian come out or Oprah comes out and said your book is amazing, #1 hit, #1 automatically. There's something to it,
Absolutely. It's just, obviously you're going to say you're great, right? Because you believe in what you're doing so much that you don't always see the cracks or the deficiencies. So to have someone else who is, essentially disconnected from you, that isn't staring at it every single day, to say, hey, what was provided to me by Isaac Belden at VEA was tremendous, and this is how it helped me, is so much more powerful than me saying, hey, this is what I offer, and this is how I intend to help you. To actually have a success story that says, like, okay, he's not just saying that he's going to do this, like, he actually helped me, and this is what he did, or this was the outcome from that promise. That's far more powerful than anything I'm ever going to say about myself.
And that's one thing somebody once said it. I can't remember who said it. So it said, a hero will talk about themselves, but legends get talked about. So I'd rather be a legend. You know what I mean?
I would rather be a legend too.
So is, how do we find you? How do we support your mission?
All right. So you can find me on any of the social platforms. So Isaac Belden, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, personally, if you want to connect. But as far as the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance goes, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we don't really do much on Twitter. If you just search Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance, you'll see a logo that looks somewhat like this. Actually, it'll look a little more like this.
Okay.
And that's us. Also, from those pages, you'll find information about the FOB. Our website is vealliance.com, and the FOB, the web-based version, anyways, it's located at FOB, which is FOBVEA.org. But if you find us on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, you'll be able to track down everything that we do.
Now, is the FOB available on iOS?
Yes, so it's available on iOS and Android right now. If you search the FOB, I will give you one caveat. Our courses are not. All of our courses aren't uploaded yet, but the FOB is up and running as a social media hub where you guys can get in there. You can connect with each other. You can create groups. You can start forming some of these bonds that we know and have seen are incredibly important in building your business and getting out into the community.
Well, I know when I get off here, I know when I'm going to go be downloaded, and I can't wait. I'm excited and I'm pumped up. So, brother Isaac, I'm so blessed and so honored. I know we played phone tag for a while, but thank you so much for taking the time. I know you haven't been feeling good, but I just want to say thank you for coming in and hanging out.
Cool. I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, if you ever need anything, you let me know.
All right, guys. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you go to your iOS. Make sure you go to your whatever device you got. Make sure you download that, because I'm about to go do that when I get back. So, guys, make sure you check him out on Facebook. He's amazing, because you can send him a message. 3 minutes later, boom, he answers you back. So he's not like that guy that's going to ghost you. So I just want to say thank you, brother. Guys, I just want to say, like my T-shirt always says, today I decide. Guys, you can decide. You can either be a victim or a victim today. It's your choice. So I just wanted to say that, guys. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment for Isaac and myself. And remember, like Booker T. Washington said, if you ever want to help yourself, help somebody else. All right, guys, I love you. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. Love you guys. Isaac, have an amazing week.
See you, brother.